Well, today is a sad day that I honestly did not see coming. For the past decade now, Zenimax Online Studios kind of seemed like the safest place to be in terms of development studios, as they had avoided some major layoffs and even seemed to be raking in money from their game, The Elder Scrolls Online. But that's clearly not the case, with news breaking today that their new MMO project, codenamed Blackbird, has been cancelled. And so we don't know all the details yet, but it does seem like most, if not all, of the hundreds of employees working on this new game will be let go as part of layoffs by the company's owner, Microsoft. And posts from senior employees like Chris Lynn, who was a senior production manager at ZOS, are already hitting LinkedIn as people are actively looking for new jobs today. Ben Jones, who was the game's director, also posted on LinkedIn today saying that this was tragic news and that this new MMO was the most exciting and ambitious project he had worked on to date, and confirming that the game had been in development for over 7 years. If you don't know what we're talking about, this is not about The Elder Scrolls Online, but a second MMO that Zenimax had been developing quietly behind the scenes since about 2018. Again, over 7 years now in development. This was actually my most anticipated future MMO by far, obviously because I'm a big fan of The Elder Scrolls Online, having thousands of hours played in that game. And say what you want about ZOS and ESO, but they know how to make a successful MMO, and they also know how to make a lot of money, having consistently brought in billions of dollars at this point just from ESO itself. So they're creating a second team to build this new MMO that improved on what they've already built and learned from The Elder Scrolls Online. That seemed like a sure thing to me, but sadly that's no longer the case as of today. Now, we actually don't know much about this game still. There actually have been 0 leaks up until this point about this IP, which is apparently new, other than that this was going to be the next, big AAA MMO in the genre, and that it was set in what was most likely a futuristic sci-fi setting. We know that primarily from job postings, which specifically talk about roles like vehicle designers, for example. And now my best guess for this was that it was going to be a Starfield MMO, because even Todd Howard has talked about how Bethesda loves having its single-player RPGs like The Elder Scrolls and Fallout to also have MMO communities as well, which then help keep the franchise fresh and alive between those major single-player releases. I mean, ESO has been the only real new Elder Scrolls content consistently available since Skyrim was released, 14 years ago, so that business model does make sense. But if that's the case, then why did Microsoft decide to cancel this game right now? Well, I have a few theories. One of those is that the Starfield IP is just not as popular as Bethesda hoped that it would be. Bethesda did take a real shot at boosting Starfield last year with the Shattered Space DLC, and it just didn't quite hit the mark for most players. So even though Starfield is a good game, in my opinion, and it's still, relatively new IP, it also has way less active players than Skyrim does currently, and even less players now than Oblivion Remastered, which is a remaster of a 20-year-old Bethesda game. So if this new game was a Starfield MMO, then the reception of that new IP and that perceived lack of interest compared to other Bethesda properties like The Elder Scrolls probably was a big contributing factor to that decision to shut it down. But to be clear, we don't know what the new game was, and the bigger story here really is the loss of employment for the hundreds of developers working at Zenimax Online Studios. I mean, to think about 7 years of your work just being cut off, before you hit the finish line, I can't imagine how devastating this is for those hundreds of developers. This game even apparently had a completely new engine they were working on specifically for this game. So there's no telling, what kind of amazing things we could have done playing in this new universe. Now, going along with the news today, studio head Matt Firer actually retired today as well after 18 years of leading Zenimax. Now, you can probably put retired in quotes here because we don't know and probably will never know all the details surrounding this, but the fact that he retired on the same day that his new MMO was canceled and more than half of his staff was fired probably is just not a coincidence. Again, regardless of what you think of The Elder Scrolls Online, you can't deny that this guy created an amazingly successful game from nothing but an idea. And funny enough, though, ESO was actually not the idea that Matt pitched to Bethesda when he started the studio 18 years ago. We know that he originally wanted to make a Fallout MMO, but was denied and was told to make an Elder Scrolls MMO instead. I mean, it worked out, obviously, but now 2 out of the 3 projects that he personally wanted to do or had started are now gone. So that alone, I'm sure, is enough to make him want to retire from his position as studio head. Also, I think that for those of you like me who enjoy MMOs, this just shows you how hard it's going to be to get a new MMO that is actually successful in the future. I mean, most MMOs seem to either quickly fade away or they get canceled before they release, which is pretty sad. I mean, if one of the most successful MMO studios in the world right now can't do it, then who can? There are, I'm sure, many reasons for this, not least of which is that MMO audiences are very different than single player audiences, and that most of us have our one MMO that we play regularly, and so we're less likely to try something new in the same genre, and even less likely to switch games completely. This may even have been a factor that was considered when shutting down the new ZOS MMO. ESO has its consistent player base. They like ESO, and so they might not consider switching to a new MMO, especially if it's sci-fi. Microsoft also owns Blizzard now, and with them, the extremely successful World of Warcraft. And with both of those flagship MMOs under them, they may not have seen a new franchise as worth the money. And I'm sure they can maintain games like ESO and WoW for less than it takes to create something completely new for a potentially smaller audience in this case. So that's probably part of it as well, which is honestly just terrible for players like us. It means new MMOs are less and less likely as the corporations behind development are just going to focus on the franchises that work. Now, I do wonder though if it makes it more likely now that we might see ESO 2 at some point in the future. I mean, Zenimax has all of this technology that they've built up for the new MMO, like a new engine that we talked about, among other things. And ESO is definitely showing its age at this point. The engine it uses is a big part of that. And one of the biggest complaints that I hear about the game, in fact, is its graphics. Now, not the environments so much, because those can be amazing, and they have been improving a lot and getting updated over time. But specifically the player models and the animations for ESO definitely feel like 10 years old at this point. So that's something that I could see coming out of this. Even potentially is some of those resources and development getting moved over to creating ESO 2, which does have a proven audience and a formula, instead of trying to get a brand new MMO and IP going, because it's definitely harder to do that now than it was 10 years ago. But yeah, let me know what you think about all of this in the comments section below. How do you think this will affect the Elder Scrolls Online and the MMO genre as a whole? Let me know what you're thinking, and yeah, thanks again for watching.